Hi, a while ago I made a video series about the construction of this bandsaw covering pretty much every detail. But people actually still prefer to build this bandsaw because it's just a little bigger and you only need a little bit more material. Now the one thing that's tricky about the construction of this bandsaw that I didn't cover in this one is making the trunnions for tilting the table, because in this bandsaw I just used hinges. So in this video I'll go through the steps for making a set of trunnions for a bandsaw like this. I started by printing the templates and cutting those out, leaving about a 3mm margin around the edges, and then outlining that on some pieces of birch plywood, and then I cut that out on the bandsaw. So I got 3 layers of plywood here that are going to form this bottom cradle. Now I need to drill this hole through there, so instead of doing that on a drill press afterwards, because that's a bit tricky to get, I'm just going to mark where that hole goes through the template, and then I'll cut that out from the middle layer so I won't have to drill that hole. Got to make sure everything lines up perfectly while I'm gluing it. For the arch part of the trunnion, I do the same thing, and here I'm actually marking the little pieces that go for the incomplete layer in the middle. So the slot in the actual trunnion is again done by pieces for layers, and then another layer on top. Now with the glue dried, I squared off this and this surface on the table saw, and now I can attach this template and cut it to the final size. I punched through the centers of the dowel positions right away, just in case I mess up the template later on. And now, cutting very, very carefully along the lines of the template, I cut it to its final shape. So here's my parts straight off the bandsaw, and they seem to fit fairly nicely. Even though the parts work perfectly fine without sanding, I figured a light sanding just to smooth the surfaces wouldn't hurt. Now the carriage bolt that goes in here wouldn't really have enough grip just with a small bolt head on here. So I've experimented with a washer which I filed a square hole into so that it grips this bolt, and bent it in a vise, and that would actually do quite well already. But what I did for my bandsaw is I made a little block about this shape that the head of the bolt fits into, and I'm going to make one of these. So here's the template for it that I've cut out, and I've clamped it to this piece of wood so that I can cut it upright on the bandsaw and still have it remain steady. Next I need to drill a large hole in that piece for the bolt head, and then a smaller hole for the actual bolt to go through. I just need to square out that hole a little bit. Well, that seems to fit. Let's see how it all goes together. That goes in here, and in here, and then a washer, and a locking knob on here. And if I leave that loose a bit, I can rotate through the range of motion on here And I can just tighten that up at any point, and it's really tight. Next I need to make the trunnion support beam, and I'm using again part of the template cutout to check the cutout that I need to make on that. So the next thing I need to do with this part is to attach it to the trunnion support beam, like so. And the tricky part with that is getting all of these dowel holes lined up. Now I've made a template, and I'm going to glue that on here and use that to mark exactly where the dowels need to go. Now doing a quick check just to make sure I got the depth right. The point of my brad point drill bit naturally follows the holes I just punched with the awl earlier, so that way I can get the holes nice and accurate. Well, those templates don't look so good anymore, but we really don't need them anymore, so time to get rid of those. Perfect fit. Now one of those 5 dowels I put in overlaps the hole, so what I have to do now is I have to drill out that part of the dowel so I can get my screw through there again. So here's the trunnion I just made, and here's the one that's already in the bandsaw. I'm not going to finish this one up because I was just demonstrating how to make one of these, so I'm not even going to bother making the back one or doing any of the other things. There's a notch that needs to be cut on this side, and a thing that sometimes people ask about is how does this fit over the wheel? There's a notch right here, so you have to cut a notch out of the beam, otherwise it's going to hit the wheel. Now the run part of the trunnion gets attached to the bottom of the table with screws both through here and through here into the sub table. And here's my new trunnion, and you can see it's almost exactly the same as the one I've got in the saw.